Welcome back to Down in Alabama. My name is Ike Morgan, and they let me host this thing. Monday through Friday, except some holidays, we bring you a 3 to 5 minute daily news update with a few topics that may be important or may be entertaining. They're mostly stories that have been reported by our staff at AL.com, and hopefully, for just a few minutes a day, they'll give a sense of what's going on around the state. Now, on the weekends lately, I've been bringing Leada Gore onto the show, and we've talked for about a half an hour, give or take, to talk about a couple of topics that were in the news that week. I've received positive feedback on that from some listeners, so we're going to keep it going. This week, there was a document that made the rounds that had been posted on the Alabama Department of Education website, suggesting activities that shouldn't be used at PE in public schools. As you can imagine, that got some attention, so we're going to talk about that for a little while. Also this week, the president reportedly made some comments about the way his attorney general talks. It's like Jimmy Buffett says, I can't pronounce my R's and G's when I'm speaking Southernese, and neither can Jeff Sessions. Now, you know we couldn't leave that one alone. Y'all know how I talk, and Leada makes me sound like I'm from Toledo. So thanks for being here. Let's go down in Alabama. One big thing in the news here in Alabama this week was this list that was on the Board of Education's website about these games that everybody's played for decades in schools, and how PE classes shouldn't be playing some of these games. Either they were too embarrassing for the kids to do, or too difficult, or they could get hurt, or whatever. And people in Alabama, as you can imagine, pretty much across the board going, this is ridiculous. You can't tell me not to play dodgeball. Eric Mackey, the state superintendent, has since said, hey, that ain't my list. We're taking it down. You're on your own, schools and PE teachers. Leada, a lot of people are saying that, hey, this is completely fake. It's not real. Was there ever any substance to this list?
Oh, there was substance to this list. In fact, let me kind of walk you through my process, because I wrote that first story. I had seen a list, a document posted by the Auburn University Montgomery Physical Education Department that was on Facebook that simply said, this is an update from, I don't think they used the word update. This is from a reminder that this was first posted 2 years ago, but we've just received this list of games that were called, the term that was used was inappropriate games for physical education. And I looked at it and I thought, honestly, this is a joke. This is from The Onion. This is a joke. Because the verbiage they used was so over the top. Dodgeball, I think it was called a paramilitary exercise or some craziness. and it was one of those things that you just go, okay, but my reporter sensibility sort of ticked up. Well, within the next 5 minutes, I start seeing people on Facebook say, what? And it's amazing how quickly these things spread. So I start looking, and the first place you go, of course, is the State Department of Education website. Well, lo and behold, there's the document. And through some other research, found out a little bit of the history of it. And it was a document that's been out there that describes these games. And there are things like tag and dodgeball, and some of them I had not heard of, like some strange names, but they were kind of all the same sort of game. These games we all used to play in the backyard. Mm-hmm. And why you shouldn't play it, and you had a potential to embarrass kids, and, that you were singling out the slow kids, and it was dangerous, and blah, blah, blah. So my story comes out, and I'm listening to the radio, and I hear Superintendent Mackey come on, and he says, essentially what he said is the same thing he told AL.com later on, which was, okay, this list was up there, but it's not something we're enforcing. We're trying to figure out why it got released this week, because it was sent out to PE teachers this week.
Yeah.
Well, I immediately start getting these emails, everybody's favorite term. Oh, fake news, you printed fake news. Well, no, I didn't print fake news. It was there. And to add to that story, I'm digging on this website. Well, there's courses of curriculum on the State Department of Education website that explains this is what your goals are in English, math, science, whatever. And one of them is PE. So you get this document, it's about 270 pages, I think, which is the course of curriculum for physical education in Alabama. Well, lo and behold, guess what's on there? Same list.
Mm.
The only difference is it doesn't have the extra verbiage calling it paramilitary exercise, but the exact same list.
Yeah.
The only difference is it actually added a couple of games, like red light, green light is apparently off the table. I'm not real sure why.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah. Well, it's where you run, and if you say red light, you stop.
Oh,
and if you
yeah.
say green light,
yeah, that's
you go.
right. I've
It's kind
seen
of like
kids
Simon Says, which is also on the no list.
Right.
No Simon Says, apparently. But so that document, unless it's been taken down today, is still there. I mean, it's still the course of curriculum. It was passed in 2009, updated in 2015, is the only course of curriculum in Alabama for PE departments. So since that time, I've heard from teachers, PE teachers, who said, yes, this is absolutely, we've been told these are no-nos, and we don't do these games. Now, in their defense, some of the games, Red Rover's probably not the safest, and some of the games probably aren't the best use of time.
Right.
But it was, I think, just the nature of the way things were worded, and then suddenly all these international news agencies are calling the Alabama superintendent saying, why can't we play tag? And tag has this, okay, we're going to play tag only if it's modified, and the modifications were like a page of acceptable modifications. Mm-hmm. It was crazy. So we had a state school board member, Mary Scott Hunter, tweeted out, I'm sending my kids to school with the direction to do nothing but like play tag and dodgeball. So, but I think what gets me about this whole thing is, A, it's not fake news because it's there. You can't argue with the fact that it's there. But two, let's give them the benefit of the doubt and say they didn't know it was there. That's scary to me. That there is a policy out there that obviously is established enough for people to send it out this week, and they all go, well, we didn't know it was there. So, of course, now you're combing through the rest of their courses of...
Right.
So it's just, they obviously got caught sort of like with egg on their face over this document, but for people to say the document isn't real, it's real. It's very real.
Well, I mean,
and the fact that they removed it.
And
yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, that's okay. And like you said, though, it was kind of understandable that people would be taking it with a grain of salt because of the way stuff was worded. I mean, when I read it, it almost read like, was this someone creating this in order for it to be shared as fake news?
Right.
Made Simon Says it made reference to gleeful teacher deception, where it's going to damage the kids because the teachers are trying to trick them. And Tug of War had paramilitary roots
it's Tug of War. Okay, it was Tug of War, not dodgeball, which is apparently, I guess, non-paramilitary roots. But it was so crazy over the top, and it turns out that it was copied from a document that was written in 1996 from one of these like PE advocacy groups or something, something like that,
right,
that was saying, these games were so terrible. And we've all read these kind of, when these advocacy groups sometimes get involved, it's kind of like reading a PETA warning. They go kind of crazy. Mm. So now I just had everybody in PETA going to tweet me now saying they're not crazy. But
well, they're over the top, is what you're saying. They go over the top. They may have a reason for not playing musical chairs. I mean, kids need to move a little bit more. Keep everybody in the game as much as you can, so there's a better option. But when you do the list as this is bad, it has a different feeling altogether.
Inappropriate. And the word was inappropriate, mm-hmm. which I think also kind of riled people up, which was inappropriate. But it also played into that whole mantra of, everybody gets a trophy and we love everybody because, you can't do relay races, you can't do tag, Simon Says, these sorts of things. And what was funny is when I start combing through this course description stuff, some of the games, I'm thinking nobody wants to do that. Nobody's going to play that game that you're recommending. And then I started wondering, well, where were you people back in 1986 when for 6 weeks in Birmingham City Schools for PE, we did cross stitch, which I'm not sure is a physical activity. You're basically sitting in a stand and sewing. So I don't know where the concern was back then.
I cannot imagine.
I would have been happy to play Simon Says. Yeah.
Well, a lot of kids I remember in PE would, the ones who weren't very athletic would want to get put out so that they can go sit down and do cross stitch or taunt each other or whatever they're going to do.
Absolutely. Yeah. I actually, when my child was second or third grade and starting to play dodgeball, hated dodgeball. And she would say, I just walked to the front and let her hit me so she'd be done. And I credited her for her problem-solving skills. But, it's so funny because I just dealt with this week over volleyball and playing volleyball in sixth grade. And, Mom, I was chosen last. And, I'm like, well, you don't really like volleyball. Why? I understand that upsets you, but you don't like it. And if you want to get better, let's go outside and try to get better. And so I think that just kind of riled a lot of people of here we are again with it. But, these policies exist on everything. I was reading the policy for food, and I was reading the policy for some other activities, and they're all very overdone, overthought. And I understand you have to have these policies in place, and everybody can't just do whatever they want. But this one really kind of caught them. So I hope someone from the State Department of Education is now looking at their website and maybe reading what's on there as far as their policies goes, and maybe learning, because I can assure you I'm reading them,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
so maybe someone could spare some time to comb through their own documents.
Yeah, one of them that jumped out at me was a standard when we were in school was kickball, and you think, well, I mean, obviously you throw the ball. Now that was a problem that you hit people with this ball that bounces. I mean, you got to toughen them up sometimes. I mean, they've got to get hurt in a way that doesn't really hurt, and that's
just
kickball.
peg them with ball, right? Just peg them.
Yeah,
I did not understand the whole kickball moratorium. I thought kickball was kind of a standard. I mean, you're running, you're moving.
Well, they say that there's minimal activity for 90% of the students, and having played baseball for 12 years or so, we do that in baseball also. There's a lot of stand around and wait time. And then this list again, this is the language. The potential for embarrassment when a kicker misses the rolling ball. That's true. Yeah, that's pretty embarrassing when you miss the rolling ball and you don't get, and it does happen.
You know what's embarrassing? What's embarrassing is when you go to the job interview and you don't get the job. That's embarrassing.
That's exactly
so let's teach them to plow through early on. And hey, I was the non-athletic kid, so I understand. I wanted to be, but it just wasn't really there, And so I understand. I hated field day. Hated the relay races, But it was just one of those things. It was like, oh, geez, I guess I better go through this. That wasn't my thing.
I loved it.
And so,
I wasn't very good at it, but I always wanted to be. I always thought I was on the edge of being a great athlete, but I love trying.
I was on the edge.
I was right there. I still think I'm a little bit of a stronger arm and a quicker bat from like retiring from the Braves right now. I still think that I was so
just
close.
Just a shade off.
Just a
shade off.
bit.
No, well, I was a cheerleader, but that was when being a cheerleader was more of a social thing than it is now, as opposed to this all-out blood sport of war that we have now.
Oh, speaking of blood sport, we didn't have dodgeball at my school.
You had war.
In elementary school, we had war ball, and there are a couple of different kinds of war ball. This one you had a bowling pin set up you're trying to knock over, but the whole team gets in the way, and we went at each other, and I had a buddy who loved to be the guy who guarded the pin, and we had a name for him that I can't even say on this show. Games are not like this these days, folks.
They're not.
I'll just say we always called, or the other kids, not me, but we always called the kid who guarded the pen the dumb A, and loved to be the dumb A, and he was a very good dumb A, but
he's well suited for that role.
I remember just tagging him in the gut one time, and he swallowed some of his Copenhagen, and that was a whole different story.
Yeah, there you go. That's another thing we had at our school they don't let you do anymore.
Game. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it was. But it's funny because I was actually, after writing this story, because this is the first year my child has had like middle school PE as opposed to just, they did recess and they had games. They had PE, but, it's a little bit more structured this year. And they were doing weight training, actually with a strength and endurance coach. And I thought, now that's awesome. That's an awesome use of time.
Mm-hmm.
And they had an actual structured program, and that was not in place. So I walk the line of, I understand, you don't want 50 kids sitting there while 3 of them, and I also understand you don't want to just go out of your way to embarrass kids, because I was one of the ones that would have been embarrassed. But at the same time, geez. And I think every time we see something like this with Alabama schools, the first thing we hear is, don't you have anything else to worry about? And we obviously do. Our school systems, for the most part, we have some very good school systems, but for the most part, it struggles. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what we always come back to is this the best use of your time? And I think that's what we saw with some of the state school boards, members questioning this, which is, why are we worried about this? And so, but, Alabama's schools from the state level have not had really strong leadership in a long time. So maybe Mackey can step in there and, my first suggestion would be, though, don't go on the radio and say it's not a document when, don't, and people assumed he was saying it's not a real document, it's not there. But he did not say that, but that was their assumption. Mm-hmm. But you got to say, I thought later he did much better when he said, I realize this is out there. We're trying to figure out why it got sent back out, but we're not, this is not going to happen under my administration. So good stance for him. I'm glad to, go ahead and speak up and get it out of the way.
Yeah, and it's not like there's a big ugly ogre side anywhere with people saying, you will enforce this list. I mean, this is just, it's a list that was there, and it was a real list, but, I mean, everybody wants to use common sense. There's not a real big fight about this. It's mostly just people kind of chuckling about some of the language and stuff.
Now, the one thing that is different, though, is yoga is actually prohibited in Alabama schools.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Which is, I realize, just, but I think the yoga and meditation and some other stuff are officially prohibited according to administrative code. They cite links to Hindu religion and da-da-da-da-da. But here's the funny part. You could call it Goya or whatever you want to call it. You can do all the same things. You just can't call it yoga. Right, yeah. You just can't call it yoga. So it's fine to do the poses, the relaxation, meditation. In fact, there's several places in the administrative code that mention the word meditation in different, they added, well, you can meditate, but it has to be secular meditation. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I don't even know what that is. What do you call that? But so that actually is but that's a controversy that's not unique to Alabama. Yoga and being controversial has cropped up in other states. Now there's a Hindu group that has come out today and said, we would like to see Alabama revisit this. Yoga has many great, benefits for people. And so I don't think they'll get anywhere with it. I mean, surely Alabama has more to worry about than yoga. When you can do it, you just call it something else. But that is a little interesting quirk. And it also lended some credibility to this list, because the list, says yoga is prohibited from, and it is. I mean, so it sort of gave some, oh, wait, this really is an actual living, breathing document. And like I said, I have heard from teachers, PE teachers in this state, who said, yes, absolutely. We have been given this list. Now, how closely they abided by it, nobody's standing there, I guess, watching them play Simon Says. And frankly, if I had to deal with kids all day, Simon Says would be like, yeah, okay, whatever. But whatever takes up our time. But that list was there, and people were paying attention to it, and people were abiding by it in many different ways. So it's good that it came to light. Let's get it off the table. It's a goofy list.
Yeah. And I think revisiting things, the whole list, and even if we revisit the yoga thing, and and we determine that it's not, if we're not practicing Hindu, I mean, I don't know if you can, in Christ's name, I stretch, but everyone may do it differently.
No, my church actually has a yoga. We actually have a yoga program at my Methodist church. So, lots of people do yoga, and I've been to yoga classes that there is no mentioning of anything religious, but I understand it has origins, and the people who raised that question, it said, yes, it has origins in this sort of Eastern religions, but, the verbiage that Alabama used, of course, was, over the top crazy. So I would challenge anybody listening one day, just, when you got a year, just sit down with the Alabama Constitution and just kind of peruse. There's way crazier things than this in there. So
yeah, we could spend, if we're going to pick things apart, sure, we could spend years doing it. Well, we have spent years doing it. But I mentioned war ball and some of the stuff that we did on the field. It's when we left school. If people only knew the games that kids played in the late 70s and early 80s, we used to have pine cone fights, and not only was and this is just going to singe the ear hairs off of people, especially if you're not from the South. But when we would have pine cone fights, our sides would either be Cowboys and Indians or Rebs and Yankees. And could anybody handle that?
No. Well, I never went to a family reunion where a baseball game didn't break out and one of the cousins didn't try to hit one of the other cousins with a bat, ever. That was just, no, and I don't think they ever connected really good. Maybe they should have worked on their swing a little bit better. But, it was a rougher time. We were out more. There was, we didn't have anything else to do. So building a clubhouse with old wooden pallets and rusty nails was just kind of like part of what you did. But
I'm thinking of the St. Louis Cardinals great Bob Gibson, who they said would throw at his mother if she stood too close to the plate.
Absolutely. Well, I can assure you the family reunions probably had some of those too. But it was, and like I mentioned, I was in Birmingham City Schools, so the largest school system in the state. And we had PE classes, but they were not, we actually had like a written test on basketball and stuff. But, I don't remember anybody ever having super structured, sorry, my former PE coaches, but super structured lesson plans. We just let's get some energy out was the basic goal.
Or so it seemed like to us, for sure. Why are we running 2 laps?
Giant tires. Right, why are we running 2 laps? Yeah, our playground was giant tires stuck in the ground. That was what it was. So it was not real exciting. So, yeah. But somewhere out there's a kid being scarred right now by red light, green light, and I'm sure they'll write a book about it later or sue somebody or something.
Duck, duck, goose, Yes.
Oh, yeah, we forgot. And Heads Up 7-Up. Did you ever play Heads Up 7-Up?
No, I don't think so. I've heard of it.
Okay, that's literally like you put your head down and then you touch somebody and they have to pop up and run just like Duck, Duck, Goose. Mm-hmm. But your head is down, and apparently that's bad because we got too many kids with their heads down or something, I thought running around was good. Just get everybody, hit them all in the head. Let them all run around. I don't know.
They might be praying. That's awful. Or saying a Hindu prayer. My goodness.
You can't do that. Yeah. You can't do that. And if they're meditating, it better be secular. That's all I got to say.
What was Duck, Duck, Goose? I can't remember. What was the problem with that?
Okay. Same kind of deal. Duck, Duck, well, they just said a lot of it was you had too many kids sitting while a few were running. Okay. And that that it was inherently unfair because the person who was chasing or the person who was being chased got so much of a head start, and that it's embarrassing.
Oh, yeah.
But, middle school in general is embarrassing. So if you're going to just cut out everything that's embarrassing in that kind of 4th through 6th grade or 4th through 7th, you just won't have school. So, solve that problem.
Almost every day in real life as an adult, I see that somebody turns out to be better than me at something, and it stinks.
I managed to, and I say to myself, I survived Duck, Duck, Goose. I can survive, being fussed at by readers.
Yeah. Well, one thing that people might pick on me and you about, Trump has Trump has recently picked on Sessions about, and you know what I'm talking about?
I do know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
that would be his Southern accent.
Trump hates his accent; it just grates on him. Trump has a New York accent, and we're not going to comment on that today. That's going to be another show for our New York audience for this show. We don't want to get them riled up,
right?
But
hate to offend.
Yeah, and that's apparently he said it. Now he said this in closed quarters with his aides and all have talked about this. And now is Trump just finding things to pick on Sessions about, or why would he say something like that?
I don't know. And it reminded me of like when Saturday Night Live was really on Sessions. That was the first thing they did is make fun of that accent.
Sure.
That his Southern accent, which I'm from this state and I'm very proud of my accent. It doesn't bother me. He does. My ear picks up a different accent with him, but it picks up that low South Alabama accent. You know, it doesn't throw me at all. I don't have trouble understanding him. It does seem more pronounced on TV than when you're just with him, you know, because I think he's being very careful when he speaks.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But when you're just talking to him, he sounds like everybody else around here.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the president is doing what so many people do, is they're equating a Southern accent with like a lack of intelligence. And I think that's not only insulting to, you know, everyone here, but it's such a mistake. It's such a historical mistake, and it's just bad. That's my best description. It's bad. I don't understand why he's doing this.
And before we get carried away with it, I'm gonna pick on everybody here there for a minute, but a lot of this is the biggest darling Sessions has ever been with liberal folks right now. They're like, I'm on Sessions, because they're against Trump on this. They won't say Sessions is not leading the charge to cover up any investigation. He's doing the right thing according to them.
Right.
And so how dare Trump talk about but
I know it is funny,
rewind 6 months or a year.
Yeah.
Sessions' accent has been savaged by liberals in our state.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Just like Jimmy Carter's accent was savaged by conservatives in our state. So, you know,
absolutely.
Everyone has fun with it, right?
They do, and it is funny to see that reversal of fortune, because I saw maybe CNN this week, and I think that was where it was sort of not praising Sessions, but definitely, you know, well, the AG has standing up for what he believes. And I was like, whoa, no, because just, you know, like you said, a year ago, he was the devil incarnate in many ways. Mm-hmm. But, you know, he takes a jab at his education, and he attended the University of Alabama School of Law, which he might want to check and see who else has attended the University of Alabama School of Law. I think he will see several, you know, a Supreme Court justice and several other now we've had some birds go through there, let's don't be wrong, you know, with Roy Moore and George Wallace and some people like that. But, you know, it's a respected institution, and I think our president, for whatever reason, just can't control his mouth. You know, maybe he needed to have some duck goose in his past. Mm-hmm. But so he says these things, and I've seen some people question, you know, that story uses unnamed sources. And that is a legitimate question. Anytime you see an unnamed source, you should question that. I agree. Yes. Doesn't mean it's not legitimate, though.
Right.
It just means you need to have a healthy dose of skepticism. But at the same time, to use the duck goose analogy, when it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck.
Right.
Well, when it talks about openly what a bozo Sessions is and how he's ineffective and weak, chances are he probably ran off at the mouth and said, well, you know, he's from Alabama. He's probably not that smart anyway, and I can't stand to hear him talk.
Yeah, we know he will use insults to kind of belittle a little bit, and that sets up his greater goal. No, I mean, no matter what you think about the policy, and he's had some successes, and conservatives have come around in some ways, but Trump will absolutely try to belittle in order to, you know, get an edge.
You know what's dangerous about that is, I think in a lot of ways the president thinks and I think in some ways he's correct, that his base will never desert him. My base will never desert me. Mm-hmm. And I'm not talking about Alabamians, because Alabamians are I don't think they're going to say I'm Republican or Democrat as much as they're going to say I'm conservative, you know. Mm-hmm. But here's the thing. If he just assumes, and I mean, we're not a swing state, but we are an interesting state, you know. If he says, I've got them locked down, I can say whatever I want about them, he needs to go back and look at the Roy Moore campaign and see how that worked.
Yeah.
Now, Roy Moore didn't say things about Alabamians, but he thought, it was very apparent that Roy Moore thought, Republicans are going to support me no matter what. Mm-hmm. They're going to vote for me, because some of our state leaders said, we're going to support him even though we don't like him.
Right.
Well, no, they didn't. They just stayed home. And so, you know, the president walks that fine line of, I love you, I love you, I love you, y'all are a bunch of idiots, and people will just stay home. And so, you know, would they do that for Jeff Sessions? I don't know, but we're getting, I think, pretty close to that point in this state where it's like, okay, now you're making fun of me. Mm-hmm. And you stood up here in Mobile and Birmingham and Huntsville and told us how you love this state and what a great state we were, and you put a hat on Jeff Sessions' head and patted him on the little head and talked about how great he was. And now you're doing this, so what else is your problem? I just think there's some frustration, even among Trump supporters, that he cannot control what he says.
Yeah.
And I think that's now, I did a story yesterday where the president has said, well, Jeff Sessions is safe till the midterms because he's got other things. He's got to deal with getting Kavanaugh confirmed and, doesn't want to take up an AG right in the middle of the, before midterms. But let's just say that he fires Sessions before that or something happens right after that. Jeff Sessions was in the U.S. Senate for a long time. And there's some people that even though they want to support the Republican president, they're going to support Jeff Sessions privately, Well, I think people in Congress have said we're going to let Trump slide sometimes because we see this overwhelming support in our home districts. Well, let's say some of that support starts ebbing. Then we're going to see how, and especially if they lose, badly in the midterms, let's see how that support continues. And that's when you start getting to the last 2 years of his term, believe it or not, and we start seeing what's shaping up for the future. So I think he walks a fine line. But, we've seen the president before. I don't think you can tell him to quit talking. He's not going to.
No.
So, if I was Sessions, like we talked about, I think it was last week, he's obviously got thicker skin than I would because I think I'd be on, I don't know, Oprah tomorrow saying, y'all are crazy and I'm out of here.
Yeah. No.
I'm going back to Mobile where everybody sounds like me. Yeah.
They don't make fun of the way I talk as much back there. But
No.
Yeah, Sessions is one of the topics that Trump has kind of held on to and continued to play throughout some of this stressful investigation stuff. The others, John McCain, that issue, I guess he doesn't want to hang on to that, but it just kind of keeps happening for him. He had, who was it that he had the interview with? He had the interview with Bloomberg the other day.
Yeah. And the whole John McCain issue and not raising the flag or not lowering the flag or keeping the flag lowered, John McCain is a very interesting person, and I everything you hear about him, I think the fact that he has all these different people speaking at his memorial service is very telling. He was around a long time, and a lot of people, even if they disagreed with him politically, were personal friends with him. And whether you hated him or liked him, the man was an American hero. Let's just, that's the bottom line. Yeah. Most presidents would have been part of this celebration of this man's life that so many Americans, really respected what he did. And it was interesting because I watched Mike Pence today, who presented the, sort of the official administration wreath at the funeral and all. And I thought, it's odd not to have a president there in this situation, but that's the way we live. He just, when you get disinvited to something, that's pretty serious. So
yeah, well, the Bloomberg reporter asked whether Trump believes that McCain would have made a better president than Obama, and that probably one of the easiest questions that a Republican could be asked. Because he doesn't, and Trump just refused to answer the question, and. That's unbelievable. Now, as a sitting president, I probably would not want to say my predecessor needed to not be there and this other guy needed to. But that's not a problem for Trump. That's not his issue.
No. And, even because, let's be honest, when you're dealing with someone who just passed away, you're not going to come out and just say, well, yeah, they were a real jerk. You're not going to. That's just being a civil human. And so, you can say, I respected him greatly. That's all you have to say, I respected his service. And I saw the president tried to kind of eke that in there some, but John McCain absolutely got the last word on this one. You talk about getting the last word. When you plan your funeral to the extent where you purposely say, I don't invite the president, and interestingly enough, did not invite Sarah Palin, his old running mate.
Yeah.
Which is very interesting.
Well, but, McCain could be a hard hitter too.
Yeah, and I think that people do understand that, and I know a lot of people who have very strongly disagreed with some of the things that he voted on.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they could respect his service.
Yeah.
And if you've ever, I had a chance this week to read more about him, and I had written about him before in connection with Alabama Senator Jeremiah Denton, who was a POW at the same time. And what they went through was just so horrific, just amazing. And so, instead of just highlighting those sorts of things, you had to have this kind of down in the mud sort of dealing. And I think Americans don't like that. They wanted to respect McCain for what he had done, even if he was difficult, which, he was a senator for a long time. I imagine most people are difficult after that amount of time.
I can imagine so.
I'm difficult now, yeah.
All right,
so I think it was a lost opportunity.
Okay. Well, we only have a few minutes. I have one other question. Doug Jones, does he need to come out and say whether or not he supports Jeff Sessions? I think it might be appropriate to pick a side, and I think somebody probably ought to ask him.
I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ooh, thank you. I got some time this afternoon.
Awesome.
Very interesting. Yes, I will let you know what I find out, because I have not thought about that. I've been thinking about Jones and Kavanaugh, but not Jones and Sessions. So I think that's an interesting. He may say no because I don't want him to run against me. But or he may say yes. Stay in the AG's office. You're awesome.
See, I personally think it would be an easy call for him, but I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, and we'll see.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll go find out. How about that?
That's good. That's great. Hey, thanks again for taking the time to sit and chat, and I hope that folks got something out of it.
Absolutely. We'll go watch football with our Southern accents, just yelling all the time, won't we?
That's what. Well, yeah, that's right. It's the weekend. Let's go watch some football. All right. Thanks,
That's
Leada.
right. Okay. Thanks.
Well, thank y'all so much for listening. Monday's Labor Day, so we're going to skip a daily briefing and see everybody about Tuesday. For Leada Gore, I'm Ike Morgan. We're down in Alabama. Y'all come see us at al.com.